your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us for our week in review on this Thanksgiving long weekend. Alberta's United Conservative Party has chosen its new leader. Danielle Smith, a former leader of the Wild Rose Party, will become Alberta's 19th premier after capturing nearly 54% of the vote on the 6th round of the preferential ballot and defeating second-place candidate Travis Taves by 5,943 votes and 5 other rivals. In her speech, Smith emphasized the need for Alberta to stand up to Ottawa.
No longer will Alberta ask permission from Ottawa to be prosperous and free. We will not have our voices silenced and censored. We will not be told what we must put in our bodies in order to work or to travel. We will not have our resources landlocked or our energy phased out of existence by virtue signaling prime ministers. Albertans, not Ottawa, will chart our own destiny on our own terms, and we will work with our fellow Canadians to build the most free and prosperous country on earth.
Smith also touched on the rising cost of living, particularly the upcoming increase to the federal carbon tax. She placed the blame on what she calls the Notley-Singh-Trudeau coalition.
I find it incomprehensible that Rachel Notley has so far refused to call on her federal NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, to lobby his taxing cohort, Justin Trudeau, to reverse that terrible decision hurting Alberta families. There is no excuse for any party leader seeking to be Premier of Alberta to sacrifice the welfare of Albertans for the sake of towing the line of her federal party. It is time for Ms. Notley to put the welfare of Albertans above the anti-Alberta policies of her federal NDP leader.
Close to 85,000 ballots were submitted at Calgary's BMO Centre during the election process of 6 rounds Thursday night. Candidate Leela Ahir dropped off in the first round with 1.6% of the vote. Rajan Sani was eliminated with 2.7% in round 2. Sani says the campaign divided some Conservatives, but she is optimistic that that will change under Smith's leadership.
We've had a very intense leadership campaign. I think it's been unifying. I think the key thing that's going to happen is that people are going to come together. Everybody who ran in the leadership campaign had the opportunity to talk about their policies, their ideas, and what's important to them. And ultimately, Danielle Smith won. She had the ear of the majority of the membership. So I think that will be different. That unity piece should come together very quickly. And beyond that, in terms of policies, I guess time will tell.
Round 3 saw Todd Loewen dropping off with 7.8% of votes, while 8.4% of the votes went to Rebecca Schultz, who was eliminated in round 4, leaving Brian Jean disqualified in round 5 with 14.8% of the vote. The message shared among all candidates was one of hope and unity.
I have always said I'm a team player. I really want to make sure that we see a Conservative government re-elected here next May to continue on this path of economic growth. I do know that's what Albertans have told me across the province, and so I'll be working hard to support our new leader over the next 7 to 8 months.
I'm excited about the future, about going against the NDP in 2023, about making sure that Albertans listen and hear our great ideas on affordability, on fixing healthcare, on our criminal justice system, and how do we make our streets safer, and of course on education, how we put it back in the hands of parents.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf was also in attendance. He says he is prepared to have talks with the next premier about the unique needs of Lethbridge and surrounding area.
Well, we need some investment in southern Alberta. In Lethbridge, we've got water, wastewater. We've got a francophone school division that needs some renovations. Our separate Catholic Holy Spirit school division needs a new building. There's all those kind of things. There's some key priorities, but we've got to get some of that work so we can get our agricultural food to market.
Healthcare is often a hot-button issue when it comes to Alberta politics. Premier-designate Danielle Smith says Alberta's healthcare system is in a state of dysfunction and disrepair and needs to be fixed.
And it means that as Premier, When I direct AHS management to double ICU capacity by a specific date and give them the resources to do so, that direction is followed immediately. And if they can't do that, then we will find others who can do it for them.
We need to take a short break, but when we return, we tell you why people were protesting outside an Alberta provincial courthouse. Welcome back. The court case of 3 men who were arrested for their alleged involvement in the Coutts border blockade grew quite a stir this week. A large group of protesters gathered outside the Lethbridge Provincial Courthouse Tuesday morning. Lethbridge police were also on the scene as the protesters blocked traffic. They were there in support of Marco Van Hugenbos, Alex Van Herk, and George Jansen, who face charges of mischief over $5,000 related to their alleged involvement at the Coutts border blockade earlier this year. Van Hugenbos is a town councillor for Fort Macleod and was reprimanded by Mayor Brent Fader, who called his behavior unacceptable. The court case was adjourned quickly. Supporter Arthur Pawlowski, who was facing 4 upcoming trials himself, made an appearance along with defendant Alex Van Herk outside of the courthouse to voice their concerns.
We, the farmers, the milkmen, the grocery clerks, and everybody else, the beef producers, if that's the case, and if we have to become politicians to bring justice back into our province, well, then that's what needs to happen. They're forcing us to abandon what we love to do, to go into the political realm and clean this sham, where the officers no longer protect our rights, but they protect the elites.
And we took that stand in solidarity in Coutts. And I'm not afraid to say we did that. I was proud of that. I've never been more proud. I've never been more patriotic.
The 3 men will return to Lethbridge Provincial Court on November 4th, where they will face the charges. Pawlowski adds that the gathering was peaceful and family-oriented. He says protesting government mandates surrounding COVID-19 continue to be necessary to ensure freedom for future generations. He was joined by an Alberta doctor who was under investigation for treating patients with traditional pharmaceuticals.
So I saw amazing people here, patriots, Albertans, true Canadians that actually are concerned about what they are seeing. And it was absolutely a beautiful, beautiful thing to see old and young and to see men and women coming together, loving their freedom. But what is the most beautiful thing is what's behind me. Look at this. I mean, is that not why we are all here? To stand for the future of our country? And here, that's the future. You are looking at the future of this country.
What happened to me when I was working in an AHS hospital in Rimbey, Alberta, is I gave ivermectin to 3 patients who were critically ill. They were all about to need life support. I gave them ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, as well as vitamins, and they all turned the corner in less than 24 hours. So all of them were headed for life support. None of them actually needed life support after I gave them ivermectin.
And then what happened after that?
Less than a day later, I was removed from all my work. All my emergency shifts for the rest of the year were canceled by AHS. Alberta Health Services filed a complaint with the college, so I've been under investigation by the Alberta College ever since.
In other news, several Alberta doctors have penned a letter to health officials saying the surgery program at Red Deer Regional Hospital could be on the brink of collapse. The 5-page letter was addressed to Health Minister Jason Copping as well as to Alberta Health Services and was signed by 6 of the hospital's chiefs. Doctors are asking for emergency funding to recruit more anesthesiologists, as well as a review of stipends and overhead relief to retain anesthesiologists and surgeons at the hospital. They're also looking for increased training positions for nursing and anesthesia. The Alberta government is providing nearly $21 million over the next 4 years to implement recommendations from a STAR-led task force on human trafficking. Country singer Paul Brandt, chair of the Alberta Human Trafficking Task Force, personally thanked Jason Kenney during the funding announcement last weekend at Edmonton International Airport for his willingness to prioritize the issue.
As a result of the training provided to Alberta 211 operators launched in January 2021, we've seen an increase in human trafficking related calls. the number has more than doubled from the past 2 years combined. 2022 is on trend to match or surpass this number. Through the combined efforts of the Safer Way Out initiative here in Edmonton and Not in My City in Calgary, the concept of safety network coordinator positions has been put in place to support the work of the North and South alert teams. It has been our dream that special focus and permanent funding would one day become a reality.
The money will establish an office to combat trafficking as well as a center of excellence for research and data collection. Recommendations the government accepted when the task force presented its report in March. The money will also support grants for community projects as well as staff to support victims and survivors during human trafficking investigations. Well, after the break, a look back on Kenny's reign. Welcome back. A long-time voice in the realm of Alberta politics is that of the late Ted Byfield of the Alberta Report. Well, I recently chatted with his son Vince, who inherited his father's passion for politics and is very familiar with the ongoings of the United Conservative Party. Vince was asked his opinion about Jason Kenney's leadership, and his answer was a bit surprising. Take a look.
Full disclosure, I've known Jason Kenney since the 90s. He is the godfather to my brother's niece.
Maybe it's a little too personal.
No, not necessarily. I discovered the hard way that there's two Jason Kenneys. There's Jason Kenney, the friend, and then there's Jason Kenney, the politician. So I always knew Jason Kenney as the friend until I spoke up publicly. For me, it was I posted a letter, an open letter to the Premier in the Western Standard that was critical of the lack of action on autonomy.
Yeah.
So then the pandemic hit, right? And I was very bothered by the incarceration of pastors. I as a history person, I knew right off the bat this was going to go down in our books, and not in a positive light. And I was shocked, frankly, to see that happen. And it seemed to me inordinately excessive that Pastor Coates, for example, was placed in maximum security. He was confined, solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. Just in all because he wanted to have a church service, right? And so anyway, it just seemed I couldn't understand why, even if he had broken the law, why isn't he just under house arrest or something like this? It seemed exceptionally excessive, and so I was obviously not alone, and so anyway, that's where the concerns started, and then when the time came just this spring for that special general meeting that never happened, but 15,000 people signed up to go to, which was unheard of in not only Alberta history, but nationally, to have 15,000 individuals willing to travel to the center of the province, pay $100 for the honor of telling Mr. Kenney that it's time to step down, was exceptional in the extreme, right? So that, and I was a part of that, I have to tell you. So.
Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly says Alberta's Justice Minister Tyler Shandro has every right to not want the province's RCMP to be used in the federal gun buyback program. Ottawa is implementing a firearms ban, which includes a buyback program, and wants to use RCMP to help them carry it out. But Lilly says the RCMP is not a national police force, it's a provincial one.
Tyler Shandro, Alberta's Justice Minister, has clearly said, look, we're stretched thin as it is. And I think the number is Alberta pays $750 million a year for the joy and benefit of using the RCMP. The feds are asking Alberta, take those resources off the streets, give them to us to help run this program. This is all because the federal government didn't plan this out properly. You know, they came up with this idea before realizing they don't have a way to implement it.
The premiers of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and the governors of Montana and North Dakota have written letters to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and U.S. President Joe Biden about the border. They want the leaders to restore pre-pandemic operating hours at border crossings, complaining that travelers and businesses are being forced to go out of their way to find other entry points with longer hours, driving up fuel and labor costs. The premiers and governors say the change will ensure the efficient and steady flow of people and goods, which will only provide improved trade activity and reduce inflationary pressure on both sides of the border. Calgary-based TC Energy has announced its first Canadian solar power project will be located in Alberta. The energy infrastructure company says construction of the $146 million Saddlebrook project south of Calgary is expected to be finished next year. TC Energy says the project will have the capacity to generate 81 megawatts, enough energy to power 20,000 homes annually. It says about 140 workers will be employed during construction, and 2 full-time TC Energy employees will work at the facility once it's in operation. And speaking of energy, after the break, we explore how one company is helping Albertans save on their energy bills, just in time for the long winter, too. Welcome back. As we inch closer to the longer evenings and colder temperatures of winter, it's almost certain that utility rates are top of mind for many, but there is a homegrown Alberta solution for this. I recently spoke with Trevor Lewington of Ridge Utilities about options for less expensive electricity and natural gas. Can you maybe explain why utility rates in Alberta seem so high right now?
In Alberta, we've transitioned a number of coal-fired facilities over to renewable energy, so wind and solar, for example. And when the wind doesn't blow, of course, that creates sort of peak demands and shifts in pricing. And after the pandemic, we've seen the economy come roaring back. We've got people traveling, we've got lots of activity in the economy, and so that's actually driving demand as well. We see things like electric vehicles starting to be present on our streets, again, increasing consumption. So for the next little bit, we can definitely expect a lot of volatility in pricing. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to continue to see prices for both electricity and natural gas continue to rise.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate. And it seems almost like the cost was shifted from taxpayers to end users. So is this why we're seeing higher utility rates partially as well?
Well, so the previous NDP government had something called what they called a price cap. So it essentially limited rates to a maximum. The challenge, though, is that the people that generate the power were still actually getting paid what their costs were. So in effect, you had a fixed rate that you and I would pay as a consumer, but then there was a tax subsidy, essentially. The government was still paying those generators from just a different bank account, if you will. So at the end of the day, whether there's a price cap or not, we still end up paying for what it costs to generate the power. And so that how that shows up on our bill just changes depending on what government policy or programs in place.
Okay, and then is this change now costing the Alberta government any more or less than in the past?
Well, as you said, consumers are feeling the pain. We've seen build outs of transmission. So, the wires essentially that get the power to our businesses and our homes. We've seen the build out of infrastructure over the last couple of years. And so the companies that have built that infrastructure pass that along. We see that on our bill in transmission and distribution fees. We're seeing the impact of federal carbon taxes, for example, that show up on our natural gas bills. And so a lot of those costs get trickled down to the consumer, and we do see that on all of the various different lines that show up on our monthly bills.
Mm-hmm. What about inflation rates? Do you think that increasing utility costs are one of the reasons for that?
Yeah, certainly we're hearing from both consumers, residents as well as businesses that they're seeing increased costs both for natural gas and electricity. And ultimately, businesses are going to pass that along to consumers in the form of higher prices. There's only so much that a business can absorb while still maintaining their margins and paying their folks. And so we will likely see those costs pass through in the form of either a higher price or a surcharge A lot of transportation companies, of course, are charging more for fuel. And so it's the same kind of idea for our utility companies.
Okay. Now, the Alberta government has been providing $50 a month for electricity and natural gas costs. So do you think that maybe there's another solution that's a best course of action for this?
Yeah, so the province acted pretty quickly, actually, by getting that energy rebate program in place, and it's now been extended to the end of the year. So on your electricity bill, if you're a homeowner or you're paying that utility bill, you will see that $50 a month. There is also some cost relief for natural gas, although that program won't kick in October. Despite the fact that we have higher prices, it's not high enough yet to trigger that program. You know, the government's been complemented by a number of different sources for acting quickly and getting those sort of inflationary help back into the hands of consumers.
Trevor, can you maybe explain the government's regulated rate option?
Yeah, so the RRO, or the regulated rate option, is something that exists primarily for electricity, but it's also available for natural gas. And it's basically a guaranteed rate. So it's the default rate. So if you don't do anything, if you don't competitively look, if you just have power delivered to your house or to your business, and you never ever look at it, you will probably be on the regulated rate option. And right now, we're seeing that option very, very high. Whereas the alternative, there's many competitive energy providers out there, especially in Alberta's market. Often a fixed rate plan is much lower. And so you can see fixed rates out there on the market for typically these days, starting somewhere around 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So it can be as much as half of what that regulated rate option is. But the regulated rate is guaranteed. It's out there. Any consumer can get that. No credit checks are required, but it definitely pays to shop around and see what else is available.
When we return from the break, we take a look at some of the local stories that made headlines this week.
We know that the First Nations people are a huge neighbor for us, and working collaboratively with them, helping their women, their mothers, their children, their sisters, their daughters, is a great place to start.
Welcome back. A new government initiative will provide 14 safe and stable housing units for Blackfoot women and their children. The families will be relocating from the Kainai, Siksika, and Bigani reserves. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf says the funding through the Indigenous Housing Capital Program will help to improve the living conditions for those women and children.
This is really important. We know that the First Nations people are a huge neighbor for us, and working collaboratively with them, helping their women, their mothers, their children, their sisters, their daughters, is a great place to start, and it'll have a tremendous ripple effect throughout their entire community as their that stability, that security, that safety allows them the housing and allows them that step back into that security where they can seek jobs, they can seek additional training at the college or university, and they can come back together as a family and regroup. It's a tremendous collaborative. The Blackfoot Family Lodging Association has worked tremendously hard to bring this forward, and we're just thrilled to be able to partner with them today.
Government officials say the project will cost around $3.4 million and should be open next year. A special Blackfoot naming ceremony took place last Wednesday as the children of St. Martha School in Lethbridge received a Blackfoot name. The event featured dancing and a powwow. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains, children from 5 Southern Alberta schools came by to enjoy the festivities.
A traditional honor guard procession was led by members of the Lethbridge and Blood Tribe Police Services. They were followed by traditional Indigenous dancers, Blackfoot elders, and staff from the children of St. Martha School in Lethbridge. Indigenous dancers jigged their way around a circle, showcasing their best moves.
I encourage them dance as if no one is watching, and the creator's going to be dancing around with everyone and blessing all the visitors, and I appreciate the visitors coming.
The school was given the Blackfoot name Naduwa Dokoyes, which means Holy Spirit Lodge. Officials at the school say they're very excited to be able to receive this Blackfoot name.
I have to tell you, our elder Peter Strikes with a Gun and Jeannie Provost, his beautiful wife, Having them here and gifting us this name means the world to us.
It's tremendously important and such a celebration of culture and festivities from our First Nations communities, and particularly for the children of St. Martha's School. It is, they are such a welcoming school community that when they're gifted with this opportunity, it's just a tremendous honor.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Important funding has been invested in Lethbridge and its trades-based economy. The Alberta government announced on Tuesday that just over $2 million will be provided to Southland Trailer Corp to continue their expansion. Rylan Saylor, the general manager for the company, says they'll build a new facility to use for cargo trailer production.
We're thrilled that this new plant will employ up to an additional 250 people, and we've already started recruiting and hiring for this facility. The new jobs created means we'll be able to offer apprenticeships not only now in welding, but plumbing, HVAC, electrical, HD mechanic, and carpentry. We're currently working with Southern Alberta high schools and their RAP programs, and the Lethbridge College on expanding these trades and apprenticeships here at Southland. We're targeting to have production started in this facility by the summer of 2023.
The funding comes from the UCP government's rural stream of the Investment and Growth Fund. Saylor says it was this funding that made him want to stay and expand in Lethbridge. Treaty 7 and its impact on the Blackfoot people was discussed on Thursday at a SACPA session. Treaty 7 was signed in 1877 after 2 years of talks, as the government at the time hoped to build the railway through Blackfoot territory. Dr. Mike Brucehead of the University of Lethbridge and a great-great-grandson of Red Crow, chief of the Kainai people at the time, believes the ramifications of Treaty 7 were not kind to the Blackfoot people.
The chiefs at that time, especially my great-great-grandfather, Red Crow, said, how can you give us land when it's already ours? And today that's in legal, I guess, context. There has never been a meeting of the minds. It's just been kind of a whitewash and steamroll the treaty. But the treaty was also to open the door for CP Rail by John A. MacDonald. So there was a whole agenda behind it, and some of the provisions and accommodations given, such as health, education, farming, ranching, have never materialized.
Dr. Brucehead adds that the Blackfoot people preferred an oral agreement compared to the written one that was drawn up. Well, up next, we learn how a popular plant used traditionally for recreation has a connection to innovation in southern Alberta. Stay with us.